Heather.
And today we're going to be talking about for loops.
So here's what happened. Basically, we were on our way to office hours with a huge box of donuts, like way more than 12. And all of a sudden, Crackle came along and knocked it out of our hands. And, well, you know, she ate a bunch, but we're not really sure how many we have left, so we're going to try and count up how many donuts we have left to give out to students in office hours.
You know what's a perfect way to do that?
No, what?
I think we can use a for loop.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
So if we think about the box of donuts as like an array of Boolean values, we can go through it and see how many donuts by setting up a sum variable to begin with and then going through and adding to that sum when we find out a donut's still there.
How come we're using an array of Booleans?
Because that's an easy way for us to store all of our information in one object and be able to go through it and say like, hey, this is true, this is false. So we can basically store like more than just one value.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
All right, so to get started, we've got to set up our sum variable, right? So we're going to say let sum be a number that equals 0. And then we can get into our for loop.
What's the first thing that we're going to do in our for loop?
So the first thing that we do in our for loop is we're going to set up our counter variable. So our counter variable in this case, let's call it like I, just to stand for a number, and it's going to be a number that equals 0. Now we want to keep going through this loop based on a certain condition, right?
What condition would that be?
Well, we could use something like we want to keep going until we run out of donuts. Does that sound good?
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, so to do that, we don't know how many, like Heather said, we have a lot more than 12 donuts, but like, I don't really remember how many I paid for up front, so we'll have to figure out how long our array is first. And luckily enough, arrays have this cool property called length that we can use to check and see how long it is. So we're going to keep going through this loop while I is less than the length of donuts. Yeah. So, and then to keep this going so that it doesn't run forever and ever and ever, we're going to say I equals I plus 1 to increment our counter variable.
Awesome. Wait, I heard that there's another way that you can do that that's shorter. What is it?
Yes, we can actually do I plus plus, which does the exact same thing as saying I equals I plus 1, and it's just a little bit shorter and a little bit easier. It's an easy way to add just one thing to a number. So now we've got it so that we're going through our array, but we want to check to see if our donuts are there or not, right?
Yeah.
So we could do that by doing like an if statement. So what would we want to check, do you think?
I think we want to check if the element at the index that we're at right now is true, and if it is true, that means we do have a donut there. And if we do have a donut there, we want to increment our sum variable.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can do that by saying if donuts at I, and then going into that if statement, increment sum, the same way that we incremented I before by saying sum plus plus.
Wait, how come we're not doing donuts at I is equal to true?
So the cool thing about Booleans is you can just plug a Boolean into a if statement like that, and it will evaluate like that. So when we're accessing donuts at I, that actually is giving us a Boolean, either true or false. And so if our donut is there and it's true, it'll go into the if statement, otherwise it'll skip it.
That's awesome. Wait, this was cool and all, but why didn't we just use a while loop?
So the cool thing about for loops is it's actually kind of hard to accidentally make an infinite loop. So like before when we made a while loop, we had to be like really careful about incrementing our variable. But the thing is with for loops is it increments, we tell it to increment at the top. So when it runs through, it checks, okay, so we have this number set up, then we go, okay, every time we run through this loop, we're going to check that condition, and then when it's done, we're going to increment that variable. So that makes it a lot harder to make accidentally infinite.
Wait, how come we're declaring sum outside of our for loop if we're going to be using it inside of our for loop?
Yeah, so it's actually this cool thing called variable scope. So the thing is, when we declare it outside the for loop, we can use it inside the for loop, and we can use it outside of the for loop. If we were to declare it inside the for loop, we can only use it in there, because variables can't really escape curly brackets.